Okay, so section 9.2 is still graphing. It's just a little bit more intense in terms of what quadratics they're going to be doing. So the difference is my vertex on the other one was always centered around 0. My vertex now is going to be shifting. So you have to use this formula that you see up here at the top, the opposite of b over 2a. That formula is what we'll be using to find our x-coordinate of our vertex. So let's go through this first example. Here is my quadratic equation, y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. My a, b, and c that they're referring to in the formula comes from the coefficients in these spots. So a is always the first number, b is the second number, c is the third number. For my formula, I have to do the opposite of b over 2a. So that means that I'm going to plug in -6 for b, and I'm going to plug in 1 for the a. So here is my formula with those numbers plugged in. So I have this negative still here, so make sure you rewrite that. And then in parentheses I have the -6, I still have my 2, and then I plugged in the 1. Now I just solve it. So the opposite of -6 is 6, 2 times 1 is 2. Dividing those two means my x-coordinate of my vertex is at 3. So how does that help us? Well, when we were setting up our table in section 9.1, we always just put -1, 0, 1, right? Well, that was because our vertex centered around 0. Now our vertex centers around 3. So we're going to put that 3 in the middle of our table. So go ahead and make your table and set that up. And then 3 goes in the middle one, and then to find those other numbers, you just find one smaller and one bigger. So 2 would be one smaller, 4 would be one bigger. So then you're just going to plug in those numbers like we did before. So you're going to be putting 3 in for the x, 2 eventually into the x, and 4 into the x spot. So we're just solving these out in order to find our y-coordinate. So when I put in 2 here, I have 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 4. So I was just showing you could write it out. You should be able just to type that in one big string into your calculator. So 2 squared, let me clear some stuff out. 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 4. So type it in one big string. You should be getting the same thing as me as -4. So then I end up doing the second one. So then I do 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 4 in your calculator. Double check, try it out, make sure you can get the same thing. I'm getting -5. So the biggest thing is just making sure you're typing it in correctly and telling the calculator to do the order of operations correctly. So just like before, once we have our table of values, you're going to come over to your graph and graph them. So 2 -4 means go right 2 down 4. 3 -5 means go right 3 down 5, and 4 -4 would be right 4 down 4. The only extra piece is you're going to need to label your axis of symmetry on these. So when you're going through this, make sure you're labeling and putting in that dashed line to represent that axis of symmetry. So I put in my dashed line. My axis of symmetry is always the coordinate of the x-coordinate of my vertex. Okay, so all I have to do is just put x equals 3, and that'll represent my axis of symmetry. Alright, pause the video and see if you can do the next question. So on the next question, it's asking you to graph -x squared plus 4x minus 2. So remember, I don't have to use -1, 0, 1 now because it's not that easy. So I have to use the formula opposite of b over 2a. So my a is -1, my b is 4. So when you plug those in, you get the opposite of 4 over 2 times -1. So that simplifies to -4 over -2, which tells me my x-coordinate is 2. So that's your first step, making sure you do that correctly. Then you're going to come over to your table and put 2 in the middle. Then I'm going to find one number smaller and one number bigger. So you should be using 1 and 3. Then you're going to plug in those numbers into your equation up here to find your y-coordinates. So this is what it should look like when you're plugging those in. Be very careful how you plug those into your calculator. Make sure you're always putting parentheses around the number that you plugged in, because this is crucial on this piece. So you should be getting +1, +2, and +1. So again, if you didn't get those, it's probably because you didn't put parentheses around this when you typed in your calculator. Okay, then I come over and I graph them. So 1, 1, 2, 2, and then 3, 1. Notice this faces down, which should make sense because this sign right here would tell me that I'm going to be opening downwards. So then I put in my axis of symmetry, so I draw in my dashed line. This is my x-coordinate of my vertex. Okay, if you feel like you got the hang of it, I would go ahead and start your assignment. If you feel like you need some more practice, pause the video and do the next question or do the next two if you're not comfortable quite yet. Alright, if you've done the extra practice, here is the first problem that it would look like. So you should be getting positive 2 for your x-coordinate of your vertex. So that means in your table you should be using 1, 2, and 3. That means for your y-coordinates you should be getting negative 2, negative 3, negative 2. Then your graph should look like this, opening upwards, and you should have a dashed line going through at x equals 2. If you still need more practice and you've done number 2, here's number 2, what it would look like. So my vertex, after solving it out, would end up being a negative 2. Once I have that, in your table you should be using negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. Then I plug in those numbers. Make sure you're plugging them in correctly into your calculator. You should be getting 3, 5, and 3. So then I come back and I plot negative 1, positive 3, negative 2, positive 5, negative 3, positive 3. So again, notice this is facing down, which it shows me it is because this leading coefficient is negative. So since it's pointing down, I know I'm okay there. And then I put in my axis of symmetry and label it with the x-coordinate. So x equals negative 2. Okay, you should be ready by now to go ahead and start your worksheet. If you're not, let me know so that we can do some more practice.